Okay, welcome back to the shop. Today I have a 2005 Ford F-150 4x4 that needs a lower ball joint. It's worn pretty bad on it. I have a video on how to check these on these trucks, and I also have a video on how to change these on the older F-Series trucks. What's different on these is they changed over to an aluminum lower control arm. It's a lot thicker, a lot harder to get these out, and everything underneath there is more beefy. So of course the torque specs and the procedures are different with IWEs and everything else that changed in 04. So this video will apply from 04 pretty much through 2014, maybe even to 2015, as how to get these out of there and change them out. Like I said, everything's more beefy and it's going to be a lot harder to get out of there. So it's a good idea to invest in the actual ball joint service kit tool to press it out and press it back in. Let's get to it. Okay, now I have a whole video on how to check these lower ball joints in these trucks, these Ford trucks, but I'll show you exactly how much this one is deflecting on this particular vehicle. We'll try it out. And you can see the knuckle, stud, and ball going up into the socket quite a bit actually. And you hear the noise. That's where our noise is coming from on this particular vehicle. Okay, so we're going to jack it up from the lower control arm. Get it up nice and high. Make sure you chock your back wheels so they can't roll backwards on us. And then we're going to go ahead and slide this jack stand underneath here to the frame. Support it directly on the frame here. Okay, we got our jack underneath there. We're going to let down on it slowly. And now before you actually let this all the way down, because the suspension travel is so far, you may want to go ahead and pull the wheel up before actually settling the full weight onto the jack stand there. It's already on there, but we're going to get this out of the way. Now what works best on this is actually an upholstery tool. It fits right into here and it'll pry off of here. No sweat. Now these are 13/16 in my case. I have a worn 13/16, but I think it's actually 21 millimeter for most of you out there. So we'll pull the lug nuts off. Now if you don't have an impact tool like this, what you want to do is break torque on these with a 1/2-inch breaker bar before actually lifting off the ground. Just enough to break torque on it, half a turn or so. Case, this wheel came right off of here. Now if you have an aluminum wheel, you may want to hit it like this and break it off of there, or with your feet and break the bond. Besides that, get it out of there, out of your way. Okay, the wheel is off. Next thing we're going to do is get out our handy dandy rust penetrant and spray everything. I'm talking the upper control arm nut there, the tie rod end nut, and of course, most importantly, the lower ball joint nut there. Everything's pretty rusted up, especially in my case, 230,000 miles, and I want it to come off in one piece. We're pulling the whole knuckle off, rotor, caliper, everything, so we want to make sure we get everything off of here nice and free. Also, a wire brush is a really good idea. Clean these threads before you even spray them on each one of these. Then we'll spray them, and then we'll wire brush them once again to get any rust off that it actually dissolved down there. These don't look too bad. You still want some lubrication. And this Mopar stuff works really good. I'll have links to all this stuff that I use to get these jobs done down in the description. The parts, tools, everything I use that has worked for me over the years. Now what's nice is that each one of these is also 13/16, so you can use the same socket for everything over and over again. Right now, let's get the rotor and the caliper and bracket assembly off to the side, hung out of the way, so we can just have the knuckle here to work on and deal with. Now when you're getting this caliper out of the way, what you want to do is get your ABS wiring right here, the small black wire, and of course your vacuum lines separated from it. They go at different points on the knuckle here, and you want to separate everything. Most of it can just pop out like this, stuff like that. Get it out of the way. Same thing with the vacuum lines. Follow them down, and then we're actually going to be pulling the knuckle, so the vacuum lines, they pull right out of there also. Flop to the side, same thing with the brake, ABS line right here for the wiring, and then the brake hose right here and caliper can go off to the side. Now the one thing you want for this is some kind of hook like this. These are OTC hooks made just for hooking the brake caliper and bracket, especially on this vehicle where it's a little bit bigger and a little bit heavier, out of the way, nice and safe, and of course it can handle the load on there. Okay, now in order to get the caliper and bracket off together, we're going to keep these bolts in, and we're going to take out these bolts right here. They're 18 millimeter. Take these out. Get ready to hold it. And since we're free, we can simply lift up on it like that and hook it out of the way. Okay, let's get the rotor out of the way so you can work on other items on here and take some of the weight off of the knuckle here. Now what you can do, because these get stuck with the hub face and the back side of the rotor here being so large, okay, it goes way out on here, it gets stuck pretty bad back there. So what you can do is use a regular 3-pound sledge, something like this, and you hit it. Avoid the studs obviously, hard as you can, you know, within reason. And if you're changing the rotor for whatever reason and it's still not coming off, you're changing it out, what you can do is take your 3-pound sledge and hit the back side on the face of it here, and that'll help get some leverage to get it off. Now in this case, since we're just changing the lower ball joint, we got to hit right here and save the rotor. And you can also use a soft face dead blow like this on the back side of the face here. So you hit it on the back side and it won't damage it. Something like this. And of course you're going to want to spin it as you're going along so you hit it evenly on there. Now let's see how it goes. Okay, for now, for my sanity and for noise reasons, we're going to spray this, like I said, in those holes. Try to work it in there. And you can even spray in the back side here. Let it do its job. In the meantime, we'll pull the center cap off of here. Now what's best to use is either a pair of channel locks, grab it, pull it off like you're pulling a nose off a clown, or what you can do is get in here like this. With the flat blade, and make a little notch in there, depending how rusty it is. And once it starts coming loose like that, let's work it around like so. That's just a little dust cap for this 13 millimeter behind here. Now this is only torqued to like 25 foot-pounds, something really small like that. Should be a 13, yeah. And that simply holds the axle in for the IWE back there. That's all it does on this vehicle. Yank that off. Keep with your cap. At that point, this should basically push right in, no problem. At this point, let's pull the tie rod end off over here. So we'll turn it back. Like I said earlier, the rust penetrants had a chance to break it down. Wire brush it again. Okay. I like to spray it another time real quick. There we go. Again, it's a 13/16. Not bad at all. And these usually come out here pretty easy, so you can either hit the side here or the top, and it'll come right out. This one, they were in here changing struts and stuff, so none of this is too hard for me right now. It's all coming apart pretty easy. So what I do, because there was a couple of years where these tie rod end threads were different, much beefier, and the upper was finer. Depends on the year and the model. I keep the nuts with the component we took off. It saves a lot of headache down the road. Okay, so at this point our outer tie rod end is off, our brake caliper is out of the way, and our nut for the axle down there is loose. So you can go ahead and loosen the upper, separate the two, get this whole knuckle to fall forward, fully separate the axle, and all we have left is that lower ball joint pretty much. So because access to this is a little bit tight in here without like a nano impact, I'm going to actually brake torque on the nut on the upper here, and we'll just go from there. There we go. Now at this point it's better off to zip it off there fast with an impact tool. Let's try the Milwaukee 3/8 impact for this with an adapter, so you can spin it off there fast. Got it off there, little 3/8 impact, amazing. What I was doing there is getting into this dry part. You can see right, the dry, rusty part, and that's what we're trying to get past on there and avoid. But the threads look good on there. Okay, now before separating the upper control arm from the knuckle, you can see all the rust right here. That's what we were fighting past getting off. Well, guess what? Going back in, this thing's just going to spin when we're trying to get past this rust. So now it's in there, it's wedged in there. Let's go ahead with some rust penetrant and even some brake clean afterwards and scrub it down so the threads are nice and clean before going back in. Brake clean. Now before separating the upper control arm from the knuckle, we're going to put the nut back onto here, just a few threads like that, and so it doesn't fall off of there. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a 3-pound sledge once again and tap the side, and that should all come right out of there. Like so. Then simply push down. To the side, and then you can separate these in a controlled manner. Okay, at this point, find your ABS wiring that's attached to the knuckle and follow it up to the frame there and disconnect it from any retainers and of course the connector from the body harness. So this is free to go. Okay, let's go ahead and separate the CV shaft from the IWE and the knuckle and the hub here. What you want to do, mine already separated, is when this knuckle is coming down, you want to wiggle this and help it back, okay? Now you can't take this CV shaft out because of the IWE right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 3 8mm bolts out. There's one right there. There's 3 of them on here. You'll be able to see them. And we're going to take it, and we're going to take it off and put it on top of, back with the CV right here, flop them both out of the way. And then pretty much the knuckle's ready to go. We need to go after that lower ball joint nut on there yet. But besides that, it's pretty simple to get to the meat and bones of this. Go ahead and take this out. And these should come right out. They're all galvanized, coated, and all that. With everything being apart on here, it's pretty easy to get each one of these. Okay. And then we're going to, you can see it's loose already there. We're going to take it off of there. and made it back up with it. Like so. Now at this point, with this knuckle straight and out like that, you can actually pull the CV up and out of there. Like so. Now because I don't want to damage any of the vacuum seals inside of here, this thing's pretty mangled already, we're going to put it to the side for now. Do a nice cleanup job going back together. Now this CV shaft is going to be in the frickin' way. What you want to do is get a bungee cord around the shaft and pick it up and attach it to the upper control arm so you can see it's out of the way. And that's the best way to do it instead of fighting it. Okay, let's go ahead and spray our nut for this lower ball joint one more time. And then we're going to spray the top part here and try to get it unstuck. And what you may notice is that these get, rusted in there and stuck over time. So what I do is I tap on it with the flat blade like this. And it's a small screwdriver. We're just going to get them unstuck so it starts moving. You can see it moving on there. At that point, what you can do is use a pick or something like that and pry it out of there, as long as your new ball joint comes with a new snap ring. Or, in my case, just to make it easier, because I have them, I'll use snap ring pliers. It works when you put them in there correctly. I had it for a different job, and it was going inward instead of outward. We'll try that again. So I use snap ring pliers because I have them. Spread it and get it out of there. At this point, it's not going to matter too much what you do with rust penetrant. It's not going to get down in there. It's too tight of a fit. So get it off of there so when we hit it, I won't get a face full of rust penetrant. I still like to clean the area around it. Just a clean freak, I guess. Okay, let's go ahead and get this knuckle separated from the lower ball joint. We'll go underneath and we'll check it out. Alright, let's go ahead and get the nut off of the lower ball joint. I'm going to bust out my old Ingersoll Rand 1/2 inch. And then we're going to go ahead and put it back on there a couple threads. Now the reason being is once we separate the knuckle here from the lower ball joint, this whole thing, all its weight, rotor, everything is going to drop. Either it drops on your toes or it drops onto the nut and holds it for us safely. So we'll put it back on just a couple threads and we'll start separating. Okay, so you have a few options for actually separating the lower ball joint from the knuckle here. What you can do is get a large hammer, like a 3-pound sledge, and hit right about here, and through vibration and downward driving force it usually separates. Or get a ball joint removal tool like this, nice and beefy, and it will press off the center stud and it hooks up top here onto the knuckle. So the biggest part about using one of these is to make sure it's nice and straight on there so we're not driving it at an angle. So let's see how this one is. Looks straight. Ooh, yeah. Better to break that than break the tool. Actually, I didn't break anything. What happens is it did that pop like that out of nowhere, got tight, and it just popped out of nowhere. And that's why I say leave that frickin' nut on there, it'll save you. At this point, you just need some strength. You manhandle it, pick it up, put your arm underneath here, and take it off. Okay, everything's out of the way. We can go ahead and press the old one out and the new one back in. Now what I do, especially on these with it being all aluminum like this, And you see how thick it is. It's really going to be stuck in there. It's really tight fit too. What we're going to do is take a 3-pound sledge and we're going to wrap it a couple of times so we can get it loose. I think we're still going to have to use the ball joint press kit, the C-frame, to get it out, but we can at least shock it and separate it from the lower control arm here. Definitely put your glasses on for this. Let's go for it. And what you're looking for is just a little bit of movement, and you can finish it with the ball joint tool. We got it. At this point, underneath here, I'm going to spray that. The big thing is, it's moving at this point. Now you could technically drive it all the way through there. I don't think an air hammer would do anything for that. I have the ball joint tool. I bought it. Let's use it. Okay, here we go. This is a setup that I'm using right here. We're going to press down with this. It's got a nice big head on here that pivots separately from the threaded rod. And we also have a huge receiver cup down here that's going to go around the outside of it. We're not going to touch the ball joint. And then, of course, this adapts it to the C-frame press here. So I'm going to slip it up into there. You got to do something like this, like that. And then we're going to tighten this down by hand. And what you really want to do, let me see once it gets close here. Got it all centered. Okay. You're going to make sure the access of the threaded rod here is on the same as that joint. So we go directly out instead of pressing to the side. And a kit like this, which I love, so far it's handled everything. I should have no problem like that. This thing's really freaking beefy. Get nice and tight on there and straight. See that? Let's go ahead and hit it. See what happens. All right, here goes nothing. After this, I'm getting me some coffee. Break time. I love this freaking tool. I'll put links to this tool down below. And the reason being is I've used this thing on tour. I've used this thing on the weirdest things you can think of, like the fusion bushings that get pressed into the lower control arm and the knuckle. It's done it all. It just, the adapters and everything, they fit everything. And the kit wasn't that much either. So you can see how down below there, okay, the ball joint came down and through. There's a hole down here, and of course the hole in the bottom of the C-frame press. Look at that, came right out of there. Okay, now going back in is a little bit different than the other model years like I was talking about. Going back in, because I imagined between the steel, between the steel ball joint and the aluminum arm, they have different expansion rates for temperatures. So what they want you to do is keep the board clean, okay? And another reason to get the Ford kit, it comes with a new snap ring and the compound they want you to use. It's a regular retaining compound that should be like green. Can be used on other stuff like the sleeves and the servo bores, transmissions, stuff like that. And what it'll do is it'll retain the ball joint in the bore no matter what the temperature difference is between the different expansion rates of two different metals. If you guys have any thoughts on that, that's the best thing I can think of because I've only seen this on these with the aluminum knuckle on them, lower arm. So we're going to use their stuff. Yeah, it's the green stuff. And they want you to put it around the circumference of the bore in here. Okay. Put it in there, and the same thing with the joint on there. And that's the best idea that I can come up with for that, why they have us doing this, is the different expansion rates. You guys can chime in down below in the comments. Either way, it comes with it, use it. That's what I say. I trust Ford engineers are doing it for a reason. Same thing, tap it in, it'll hold the ball joint for us while we're finicking with the entire C-frame setup. Don't think that's going to hurt it. If it can't handle this, it can't handle the thousands of pounds this truck's going to put onto it, off-roading and whatever else. So we'll put that around in there, open that up, and then we'll find what works on here. One out of the way. I have to find something that goes over the outside here. This one actually does perfectly because it wasn't compressed yet. This one's all flattened out, you can see it, so it doesn't work on there. So we'll use this one, and something like this will work. Okay. So let's go ahead, same thing. We'll get this set up on here so you can drive it in there nice and straight. This is why it's nice to have that ball joint sitting in there already so we can line this stuff up. Very important to press these in straight. Like I said, it's a very tight fit. Now what I'm going to do is do it by hand at first so we can get a feel for it. Okay. Get it snug. You can watch it too, it's going right in, and not the strongest guy in the world, and it's going right in there. Perfect. So at this point you can either do it like this or with the impact. I'm going to do it like this, do a little workout. Oh yeah. And that's where it's tapered inside there and starting to really bind and get tight in there, which it should, and it's popping each time. That's perfectly normal. This way, I can tighten it. I don't damage anything. Loosen it. Oh. Oh. Like Scotty Kilmer. Oh. Ball joint kit goes away. Now, at this point, let's bring it in a little bit. Now that you got a general idea of how it's done from afar. What you're going to want to do is look at the flange of the ball joint down here. All the way around with a light down here, and make sure it's flush against the arm. That we know it's pressed in all the way, and of course, evenly. After that, you can throw a snap ring on up here. Okay, going back in with the snap ring, make sure you use a new one. That's why it's good to use the Ford kit, because it includes it for sure. You can see right here, it includes it. And also, one thing to note on here is one side's going to be a rough cut on there where it's sharper, and the other side's going to be either rounded over, okay, on the edges here, or chamfered. Okay, you want to put the chamfered side up. And I usually put the ears inwards, inboard, as a general rule on snap rings, just so they don't interfere with anything with the knuckle. So we're going to put it on there. Okay. and get it snapped in. What I also do is I will tap it in there lightly and then tap inwards on the ears. Now this one honestly is brand new and it's well past the arm here, so it fit in there, snapped in and dropped in just perfect. So at this point the ball joint is done, nice strong joint on there once again. It's time to reassemble the entire front suspension here. Okay, at this point it's cleanup time on here. Everything needs to get cleaned up, all these threads, the axle, the IWE, all that needs to get cleaned up before we go back together. So when we go back together, we just kind of zip it together, torque it down, and we're good to go. So we're going to go ahead and just start cleaning all this stuff. I'm not going to record everything, but it's something you definitely want to do. Cleanliness is a good idea when it comes to automotive, and it's not just engines. Everything you do, you need to have some form of cleanliness so you don't have issues afterwards. How long did that take? Maybe 30 seconds, and it's clean, ready for greasing. At this point, what I do is I cover it. Okay, and move on to the next, which is the threads on here. You want to clean the threads, and you want to clean the nut. You want to degrease them with some brake clean, and they'll be ready to go for our Loctite going back together. Okay, now going back together, like I said, make sure all the threads are clean, the nuts are clean, all that good stuff. And like your CV shaft right here, where it splines at the IWE, is greased up and clean, and the shaft is greased up. And I even, let's see if I can pick this thing up. I even clean inside of here, where the IWE is at in there, where it meshes to the hub, and I grease the splines and the internal roller bearings. And that's right through the center here. There's little needle bearings in there. Oh. And you want to grease them up, they can cause their own noises. So everything's all greased up, cleaned up. Now before we try to pick this whole thing up and try to put it on here, make sure that your nut for the lower ball joint is clean, ready to go, and plenty of blue Loctite on there. And put it right here underneath it. And we'll be able to put it on there, a couple of threads, and it'll hold the whole friggin' knuckle for us. Here we go, workout for the day. Okay. Just kind of get through there. Hold it. And a few threads. Perfect. Now we can just sit forward, just like that. Unwrap our ABS wiring from it. Get it out of the way. Like so. And we can concentrate on getting the IWE, the vacuum hub, and the CV shaft all splined up. Now my vacuum hub, we're reusing it. If you didn't know, these cause a lot of problems with ratcheting type noises, grinding noises in your front end. So we cleaned it up, we greased it, okay, where the seal's at there, and of course the teeth on the back side here, so it can actually spline properly with it. So just like putting an IWE in, we're going to get this thing down. That way. Okay. We're going to get the vacuum ports up, just like so. And we're going to put it onto the vacuum hub, or the CV axle here. And then you can go ahead and put it in here. Now once you've got the tip of the CV through the hub here, the axle, the hub bearings there, where the needle bearings are at, like so. Pick up on the shaft, and then simply get your IWE into place and bolt it up. Okay, once they're all in by hand, I just snug them down like this. That's it. At this point, we're going to go ahead and connect it up to the upper control arm. So we'll pull the nut off for the upper control arm ball joint. And same thing, we'll throw some Loctite on there, some medium strength. And it looks like I'm running out. So we got that ready to go. Everything's cleaned up. At this point, we can make sure we spline the CV shaft with IWE. So we're going to push it up in like this. Okay. Help it up into there. Let it go through. Get our upper ball joint through the knuckle. Okay, now kind of hold it for us. And just spin the shaft. You see we're not connected? We're not connected to it back here. You hear it? We're going to spin the shaft and spin this until they mesh. Now they're locked and it's splined properly with the IWE. You'll be able to tell by spinning this, and the shaft will move also. Okay, we're going to make sure that's fully seated in there once again before we tighten this down. At this point, let's go ahead and put the upper on here. The nut falls right through, and turn it. There we go. Okay, so at this point, with the upper connected in there and the nut on and the lower, we're just going to cinch them down, snug them up a bit so they seat in there, top and bottom. We can get the rest of it assembled and then torque them down all at once. We're going to push down that arm just like that. And same thing down here. Okay. Quick turn. Feels good. Feels right. Okay, let's torque down the lower first. And that's 111 foot-pounds. It's already seated in there. We just need to check the torque. Okay, good. And then we'll do the upper. We'll check the upper, and that should be 85 foot-pounds. Nice and tight, plenty of Loctite, everything's clean. Wipe off the excess. At this point, let's spline the CV with the IWE and tighten down this little 13mm nut out here. Okay, now this one out here, you can put Loctite on it or not, it really doesn't matter. I like Loctite on everything. And this one's almost empty, so I'll put the rest in here. You put it on there, it's 13 mil. Now, like I said, push in on the back side of the shaft, pull it this way while you're tightening that so that it stays splined with the IWE. First thing we're going to do is make sure it is still splined. It is. And then we just snug it down. Okay, everything seems fine still, and we can torque this down to, I believe it's 24 foot-pounds. Let me go check. It's actually 20 foot-pounds. So torque that down. Okay, perfect. Let's get our little dust cap back onto here. As long as we didn't destroy it too bad. clean this. Clean. And the rust penetrant earlier. And then we're going to grab our 2 bolts for the brake caliper. Same thing, blue Loctite. We'll get these snug. Back into there. I do the top one first because it's a lot easier to line it up back in here. Very easy actually. That one's in already. And then for the bottom one, same thing, put in the hole. Okay, and then just lift up a little bit. And it'll fall right into there. And we'll snug these down. Let's get our ABS wiring connected back up and hooked in. Your vacuum lines also connect up to this brake hose and all its connections, little clips. Okay, everything's back together, the brake lines, the brake hose, the ABS sensor wiring. Now we're going to go ahead and finish torquing down the caliper bracket bolts. They're 148 foot-pounds. Quick spin, listen to it, make sure the backing plate didn't get bent and it's grinding or any other weird concerns where it doesn't sound right. So it sounds perfectly fine. Brake pads are sliding over it just a little bit. Okay, at this point everything's back together. Let's get the outer tie rod end back on here. Make sure it's nice and clean. Again, blue Loctite. Plenty of it. You don't want this thing coming up on the road. Get it seated in there. Okay. And we're going to hold it from the bottom and spin it in. Now this one, this nut right here, is the same torque spec as the upper ball joint, 85 foot-pounds. Alright. Okay, now that everything's back together, take a second and look over everything, make sure everything looks like it got put back together and looks correct before you start putting the wheel back on it here. Only takes a few seconds. Okay, so it was one heck of a job, but it's not that bad as long as you have the right tools. This could have been way worse if I didn't have that ball joint press tool and stuff like that. Overall, this truck had a lot of miles on it. Original ball joint, and everything still came apart on here. All the stuff being galvanized like that, all the threads and stuff like that, they seem to come apart a lot easier nowadays. So, overall, not too bad of a job. Throw your wheel back onto here, torque it down the star pattern, 150 foot-pounds. Go for a test drive, make sure everything sounds right and gauge is right, and then come back and re-torque down your wheel to 150 foot-pounds. Now, if you did compress your pads in to get the caliper off of here, make sure you start the vehicle up, keep it in park, hit that brake a couple times until you get a nice firm pedal before you ever go out and drive it. Not bad.